Good day to all. Welcome to Extreme Recap. We are introduced to journalist Justin Sanderson, who is well known for his investigative skills in the opening scene. As he enters the terminal, he is currently preparing for his trip to Tel Aviv, Israel, at the airport. The End of Civility, a well-known book, appears on a shelf to him. It turns out that he wrote the book. Justin approaches the bookshelf in a curious manner, only to meet Joe Beaumont, a fellow traveler. Joe immediately recognizes Justin and expresses his admiration for his work. After that, he eagerly requests an autograph. Justin buys a copy of his book and personally signs it for Joe later to show his appreciation for the support he has received from his fans. Justin calls his wife while he is waiting in the airport terminal. She asserts that she will be alone and appears to be sad about his departure. However, Justin explains that he decided to go on this journey and learn more about it because he saw something extremely unusual. He notices a strange series of coincidences as the two continue their conversation. Is the 15th of October also, 10:15 is the flight number. Additionally, due to an unanticipated delay in the departure time, the aircraft will now take off at 10:15 rather than 9 o'clock. Justin, be careful not to jump the shark like Jim Carrey. The passengers, including Justin, continued to board the awaiting flight after a while. He sees a family having trouble with their seating arrangements as he enters. They are having trouble adapting their children. Shockingly, Justin offers his own seat to the family, liberally obliging their necessities. After that, he makes his way back to the main cabin, where he sees Joe once more. A strange MP3 player is hidden behind the seat in front of Justin as he settles into his new seat. He plugs in earphones and begins listening to a podcast called Enigmatic Antique, because he is intrigued by it, containing an episode titled The Tragic Mysteries of Flight 10 Inches 15. Surprisingly, the narrator is discussing the same flight as I am. Wow, he claims that the flight will disappear from radar in the next hour. Never again to be seen. Justin is intrigued by this, and he continues listening to the podcast. The flight captain's name, Donor, is then revealed by Enigmatic's narrator. Justin finally becomes concerned about this, so he encourages another passenger to listen to the podcast in the hope that he is mistaken. The man, on the other hand, politely declines and moves to a different seat instead. Unable to shake the mounting anxiety, Justin is forced to keep listening to the podcast. The narrator predicts in the following chapter that a bird will precisely strike the aircraft at number 10:21. To Justin's surprise and horror, a bird actually struck the plane at the specified time. This exacerbated his panic and caused him to rush to the restroom, where he tried to calm himself by repeatedly reminding himself that the past was over. After that, he twists his body into the form that 10:15 would take, and defecates. And following this, in order to obtain clarification regarding the bird accident and the peculiar engine noise, Justin returns to his seat and calls one of the flight attendants. The flight attendant, on the other hand, asserts that she is unaware of any such incidents. Even when Justin asks him to talk to the captain, he says he doesn't want to make a big deal out of it. Justin responds by shouting in rage, something he has never done before. However, he quickly realizes his error and apologizes to the flight attendant, assuring him that he will remain calm. When Justin picks up the podcast, the narrator ominously states that the plane will disappear at precisely 11 p.m. 15 alongside the pilot's last words, "Good night, New York." When the poor man hears this, he becomes even more agitated and unruly. Therefore, Justin finally stands to look for hints. He quickly realizes that a number of cameras allow passengers on this flight to see the pilots in the cockpit. The perplexing may have been caused by a device interfering with the flight's communication system, according to the podcast. The focus is on two foreign men who are occupied with their devices in circumstances that are fraught with suspicion. After that, he comes up to them and impolitely asks them to put their phones away. Justin's racism is exposed by the podcast. The two men, on the other hand, counter that their phones are in airplane mode. He fights with them until flight attendants intervene and tell him to go back to his assigned seat because this makes just enough set. After that, Justin digs deeper into the podcast to learn more about a man named Igor Olov, who was on the same flight to Tel Aviv as Justin. It turns out that he will be giving evidence against the Russian mafia. Because of this, Justin gets the impression that the Mafia may have sabotaged the flight participation, but he also believes that an undercover U.S. agent will be present. Air Marshal on board who would have important information about the aircraft's safety. With this new information in mind, Justin goes to a flight attendant one more time and asks to talk to the Air Marshal. However, the flight attendant's persistent inquiries were understandably irritating. Enlists his assistance by requesting that he remain in silence in his seat. Justin goes to Joe and trusts in him. Joe, who is also a pilot, says that air marshals frequently have a mindset that is similar to the one terrorists used to get Justin to investigate the Russian passengers' belongings. After that, Justin snuck into the luggage compartment of the Russian passengers and began checking their bags while they were asleep. This was noticed by the plane's other passengers. However, Justin continues and accidentally drops a bag on one of the Russian passengers as he attempts to open the overhead compartment. The two men get into an argument as a result of the scene. Just at that moment, Justin reveals that the Russian mafia intends to execute Igor Orlov, alarming everyone. Captain Donner walks out of the cockpit and warns Justine not to cause any additional issues, and even Igor Orlov himself emerges from the first-class section, anxious and scared. Additionally, the other passengers begin recording them, forcing Justin to return to his seat in silence. The narrator shockingly reveals that Justin is the one who was directly connected to the flight's disappearance when he restarts the podcast. He also plays the audio of Justin fighting with the Russian passengers before. The sleeves are the main character, and they have no words. However, Captain Donner takes him to the flight attendant's dock and confronts him about his erratic behavior before he can respond. However, Justin continues to argue and advises the captain against saying, "Good night, New York," as it will be the final thing they hear before the flight evaporates. The captain is persuaded by this that Justin is having a psychotic episode and is mentally unstable. Justin is detained for threatening to disrupt the entire flight shortly after the air marshal finally reveals her identity. Justin is now seated next to the United States. He is told by the air marshal that he will get psychological help right away when they land. Despite this, Justin continues to assert that he possesses and tries to persuade her that he is not going through any kind of mental breakdown, evidence of the upcoming events. The air marshal, however, is not persuaded by this. After that, while she's away, she talks to the pilot. Joe comes up to Justin and says that he believes in him. He also says that just being on this plane means there are endless possibilities. Joe, a pilot himself, accepts Justin's proposal after careful consideration. Before it vanishes, take command of the aircraft and land it in Canada or a safer location, excluding this. To enter the cockpit, Joe needs a pass code. Justin is fairly certain that the number is 1015 because that number is at the center of everything that is going on here. Joe steps into the cockpit with this information, takes control of the plane's operations with force and incapacitates the captain. The passengers feel panic as a result. Joe, however, reduces the cabin's air pressure before they can react, eventually rendering everyone unconscious. He then says the haunting words, which is an unexpected turn of events. Brooklyn later. A floating doll is in the water next to Justin as he approaches the island's shore. It soon becomes clear that their plane went down on water. Justin looks around in a panic, but no one else is there. He decides to play the same MP3 player again shortly after discovering it, as the podcast and area continue to recount. According to the narrative, a comprehensive search for Flight 1015 was carried out in the second section, but the efforts were fruitless. After a few days, fortunately, a cargo ship found a small patch of land where all but one of the survivors had survived. Since Justin Sanderson could not be located anywhere on the desolate island, the narrator mentions that he was reported missing. At the same time, Justin looks up and sees the entire flight crew and passengers approaching him. They start to physically attack him, obviously furious about the circumstances they believe caused the plane crash. His unfortunate and as a result of this. But that's okay. Death. It didn't exist. It was merely an episode of a television show about an author listening to a podcast created by someone else. After that, our writer wrote down everything. Then I assured it that Adam Scott is fine. Turn on notifications, please subscribe for more videos like this, and like the channel to support it. Thank you very much for watching.